Hi, and welcome to Dear Art Producer. I am your host, Heather Elder, and today is September 26, 2023, and I am joined by assistant producer, preacher, Aggie Ryan. In 2019, Aggie was introduced to the advertising world and interned at Valiant Pictures, a boutique production company in New York. While she was there, she read pre-production books, treatments, scripts, and assisted with editing ads. With her heart set on moving to Austin, Texas, her colleagues at Valiant all told her to look into Preacher. In her 2+ years at the agency, she's worked with clients such as Sport Clips, High Noon, Natalist, Afia, and Foot Locker. She's also built a Preacher confessional radio station at Willie Nelson's ranch for Locktoberfest and contributed to the I Voted sticker, which just recently won a Bronze Lion. Not only is Aggie a producer, she's also an independent filmmaker. She started making short films at an early age and eventually went on to get her BFA in Media Arts at Southern Methodist University. Hi, Aggie. How are you today?
I'm great.
I'm so happy to have you as a guest. I've been looking forward to it, get to know you a little bit better. And now very interested in wanting to know what the heck a Preacher confessional radio station is.
Absolutely. So back in last October at Willie Nelson's ranch in Luck, Texas, he throws a big music festival, and there's an old chapel there, and they wanted to turn it into an activation. So the Preacher creative team came up with the idea of a Preacher confessional radio where you can walk in and basically confess your sins, and they'd broadcast out to the whole festival. So
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was quite an experience. Yeah, we actually wanted it to be a real radio station. So I started by turning to the amateur radio club in Austin, and they quickly told me that it's virtually impossible to set up a radio station in that small of a radius. So we then turned to our kind of sound guru here in our office, who is very experienced in, all of, music and all of that. And so he helped us hardwire speakers all around the festival grounds. And we ended up just doing it the old-fashioned way, from just connecting a mic to cable to speakers, and had them, to
Did
go in.
people love it?
Oh, yes. It was so fun. People said some juicy confession. We ended up recording it all, and we have a fun case study that we put together that'll eventually be on our Preacher site. And it was such a fun experience, because you could just see people, kind of coming up a little vulnerable, and then all of a sudden they'd get a little more comfortable behind the mic, and they'd send their friends out to like the food court area so that they could listen to what they'd say.
Oh my gosh. Okay, you have to give us an example of one or two things that people said.
Oh, there was a lot of confessions of like stealing avocados from grocery stores, or there was some funny ones of like how I taught my children curse words because my mother taught me curse words, things like that.
That's really great. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm going to have to peek back at the Preacher site at some point to see and read that case study when you guys put it up there. That's really quite brilliant and fun.
Yeah, it was a really, really cool activation. Took a lot of work, a lot of manual labor, and some late nights, but that was just kind of the most fun project recently.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I know we touched on it a little bit in the intro, but you worked at Valiant, which was a production company back in 2019. I'd love to hear a little bit about what your experience was like there and what inspired you to check out Preacher, and, what skills did you learn working at a production company that are helping you today?
So back in 2019, I found the internship at Valiant Pictures, and I had a lot of hands-on experience there. I was in the office just trying to get exposure to the production world at that time, not really realizing that advertising was so closely connected to that side of production. And so they would have me, read over pre-pro books. And when they would go off to go on shoots, I would kind of like stay back and read over, the scripts and just familiarize myself with the campaigns that they were working on. And then eventually I also was invited to some shoots. And that's when I like really was like, wow, being boots on the ground, involved in the productions while I was kind of working as a PA technically, but it was just to be involved. I was like kind of slowly fell in love with the whole experience. And when I had asked them, where can I find something that's, similar to this, but, more in the producer kind of role, they were like, you should look into production coordinator roles at agencies. And I kind of already had my heart set on Austin, just being in Texas for 4 years at Southern Methodist University. I was like kind of already seen the Dallas scene. So I was excited about Austin. And my friends over at Valiant Pictures just said that Preacher was the place to be. So I was connected with Stacey Higgins, the head of production here. And it was just a quick turnaround to getting hired and starting virtually right away because I started in 2021.
That's
so
wow.
Yeah, we weren't in person quite yet.
But you're in person now.
Yes. We are pretty much back in the office Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I come in most Mondays and Fridays, but it's nice to have that flexibility.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's great. I'd love to hear that. Okay. So can you share with us a little bit about your role as an assistant producer at Preacher?
I basically started as a coordinator and then slowly worked my way to having more responsibility. And my role kind of started with me shadowing producers and kind of sitting in on pre-pro meetings and then eventually getting invited to go on sets and be involved more in the post-production of projects. And now my role is mainly like working on photo shoots and more recently photo and video shoots and some social content work. So my responsibility has definitely expanded.
So tell me, what are you known for on your team?
I'd say I'm known for wearing a bunch of different hats.
Yeah, that seems to make sense. I feel like I get that answer a lot when I ask it. I feel the same way for myself, whether it be working on an estimate or looking for a client that would match a photographer that I work with, or maybe editing a treatment, any of those things. Like, I feel like the roles that you and I both play, we really have to just kind of like jump in, roll up our sleeves and kind of be ready for anything. Otherwise, I think we'd be mismatched for our jobs if we could do that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is there anything that comes to mind that would be helpful for maybe photographers or directors or reps to better understand about your job? I know that there are so many challenging things that go on behind the scenes, and it's never just as easy as like, oh, I sent you an estimate, let's get it approved, or, oh, you sent me this great body of work, I'm going to share it with this creative director. Like, I feel like a lot of people think of, contacting you and the job that you do is very linear, but there's so much that you do that people just don't have access to the knowledge. So is there maybe one or two things that kind of pop up?
Well, what first comes to mind is tight timelines. I feel like a majority of the time, we're connecting with a rep or a production company, and it's like there's no time.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's quick, and so always having someone who understands, like, we're kind of constantly, racing against the clock. That's always really helpful because we're all on the same team. We just want to make sure we're doing our work most efficiently in the short time that we typically have for projects.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Okay, so tell me what you love about your job.
Oh, I love that every day is kind of an adventure here. So I feel like, I work a 9-to-5 job technically, but we're always hit with different adventures. And, like the Lucktoberfest thing, like that was something that you don't think of as being a job. You think of as like a fun activation. You're going to a music festival, but also working at the same time. So yeah. I feel like that's kind of what I love most about the job is that, every day is different. And so each project is kind of an adventure and you get to experience all different sort of things.
Well, and I bet too, in those situations, you're really appreciating the opportunity to continue to learn, right? I feel like our job is so different every time. And it's not, I'm constantly amazed. Like I've been doing this for a long time, but every once in a while, I'm like, oh, I just learned something new today, which is great.
Absolutely. I feel like, I'm learning something every day, and I would absolutely consider myself very new to the industry. So every day is like, I feel like I'm a sponge. I'm just taking in all this information as I go. And it's always validating to hear that from people who have been in the industry for so much longer, just that every day we're all kind of learning new things and adapting with the new technology and all of that stuff is a whole different thing,
Yeah. No, it is true. And I would guess that being in the office for you is really quite helpful, right? Because you can collaborate, you can meet people, you can have conversations about jobs that, maybe wouldn't be as easy if you were on Zoom. And, it gives the whole team more chances to kind of connect on different levels.
Absolutely. Yeah. When we shifted to being in person, I was like one of the first people to like come in almost every day because I was, again, new to the industry, and I was, just wanting to soak it all in. I had moved to Austin for this job, so I didn't really know many people. So this was a great chance to be in person, meet people, and, be in the office.
Surrounded by really creative minds. So I think that's really inspiring. So it's great. I'm glad to hear you guys are back in the office. Okay, let's talk a little bit about marketing to you. How are vendors like photographers or directors or, let's just stick with them, I guess, for now. How are they connecting with you right now? And reps, is there a preferred way that you like to be contacted? Are there useful messages that rise to the top for you?
Yeah. So I would say traditionally it's via email. I'll get tons of emails from reps and different production companies, but the most effective way is meeting people in person. So, we host screenings regularly. We're almost at like 2 screenings a week on the busy seasons. And that's a great way for us to get to know reps and production companies and actually sit down and talk about the work that everyone's making. So I think that's a really effective way. And also it gives the creatives a chance to meet these people and say, oh, actually, I remember that name because they came in and, we all had donuts together on a Tuesday afternoon, so.
I love that you're still doing the portfolio shows. So many agencies have stopped doing them. So it's great to hear that you are. Are you still doing Zoom calls or Zoom shows, or are you just trying to keep them all in person?
We do Zoom calls and that stuff, but to me, it's more effective to just meet someone in person. If they're in town, we'll host them in the office. But yeah, we do Zoom calls. I'll typically just limit that to just the producers, but screenings I'll open to the whole agency. So you're meeting more people when you're coming in person and making that extra step.
Okay. And what type of work are your creatives gravitating to right now? And I can tell you that from where I'm sitting at my desk right now, for a long time, conceptual was the thing that I was getting a lot of calls for. Then it became lifestyle that we were getting a lot of calls for. At your agency right now, what kind of work are your creatives looking at?
I'd say we are doing a lot of like cinematic kind of almost narrative kind of work where there's like a short story within a short amount of time. So, a great example of that would be the most recent Country Crock work that we produced that kind of shows like it's a very short story about, children, kind of like it's almost a whimsical feel where they see someone's mysterious mother cooking in the kitchen. And then, they kind of bring in the Country Crock butter into the whole narrative. But it's just, you feel like you're watching a short film in a 60-second ad. And so I think that's the kind of work that we're gravitating towards, feeling like, you're getting a little story within your commercial.
So with that in mind, what do you look for in talent, right? When you're reviewing artists to share with your creative for a project, what are you looking for?
I'd say it's a healthy balance between skill, like the actual, how are they in their craft, whether it's, say, a photographer, videographer, or an actor, like how are they in their craft? And then also, how are they going to mesh with everyone on set? Like how are they going to be to work with? So knowing that, they are great with talent and they are super communicative and they are, respectful of receiving feedback. That's a huge benefit to have when working with any talent.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. Okay, so what is your process like for sharing options with your team, right? Like your creative said, okay, I need to find a director and a photographer who can shoot this project. Show me who you've got. How do you do that? Yeah,
so I'll typically make a spreadsheet and do the whole link people, and it's super nerdy, but it's the most efficient way to do it. Send through links and, give the creatives the opportunity to check the boxes of who they, most resonate with. But, I'm always open to hearing who the creatives want to work with as well, because, everybody's kind of has their finger on the pulse here. So people know, oh, I've been dying to work with that director. This is a great opportunity for us to do this. We'll absolutely take those people into consideration and do our best to work with who the creatives want to work with.
Do you feel comfortable as an agency hiring vendors that you haven't worked with yet?
Absolutely. Yeah. We are always open to working with new vendors. It's always great to, stay with the same people that we're comfortable with. And we always want to, support people who we're friends with. But at the same time, depending on, the project, the budget, the location, it's not always going to be the same people. So yeah, we will never pigeonhole ourselves into picking one person or one company.
And when you're reviewing talent for a particular project, is there anything that would be helpful for you to see on a website?
I'd say a range of work is always helpful. I feel like sometimes you'll see work that's all the same, or all of the, the same look and feel, which is always great. That's always, it's oh, you're really good at that one style. Mm-hmm. But I think it's important to see a range, because that way there's some flexibility with that specific creative concept that you're it's not really fitting in that style, but we know we want to work with them, and seeing that they can be adaptable and have a range in their work is always helpful.
Is it helpful for you to see different categories on the website, like lifestyle or, at work, pictures of people at work, or travel and tourism, right? Have a website that is divided by categories so that you can easily go into a section that is relevant for you.
Absolutely. I find that super, super helpful. The easily able to click through a site is absolutely super helpful. And even if it's as simple as, the tab at the top, I think that's the most accessible way to be oh, yep. Okay. We have a lifestyle shoot coming up. We know that this person has this work to show, or portraits. I feel like that's kind of been a big thing recently for us. It's finding someone who can do portrait work and having that tab, just knowing, okay,
right.
Click on that site right there. Everybody check this out, because it's right here on their site.
Okay. So you've chosen your talent, right? You've assembled your talent, you shared it with your creative team, they've checked off the boxes, and you've narrowed it down to a couple of people that you will be wanting to bid with. I'm guessing at that point you would have a creative call, and we all know how absolutely critical the creative call is. And I think the answers people think are obvious to this question, but I always get little nuggets from art producers. I'm really curious what advice you have for artists in regards to the creative call. And does it hurt them if they're not able to be on camera?
Oh, I mean, I think it always depends. For the note about the camera, like it always depends. Like if you can't be on camera, I don't think there's any judgment against that. Of course, if you can, that's great. Like we're absolutely an on camera kind of agency. So we're always like, unless, you personal reasons, you don't want to show your face, but like most of us are typically all on camera when we're on calls just to, get FaceTime and everything. But for topics to cover, I would say laying it out all on the table and asking questions about the creative concept is always important. And sometimes those, like I said, like the short, quick timelines, sometimes the creatives haven't even had a chance to think about those questions. So having a partner that asks those kind of, difficult questions that might question the concept a little bit helps in the long run to iron out any sort of confusion so that so everyone's on the same page when we get to making it real.
Yeah. Okay. So here's something that is a bit of a hot topic for everyone right now, are the idea of treatments. I'm wondering from your point of view at your agency, how valued are the treatments? Do your creatives read them? Do you share them with your clients? What sort of insight can you give us on how you guys utilize the treatment on your end?
I'd say treatments are important. I don't have that much experience with working with treatments, and I don't think it's something that we typically share with the client. But absolutely, we would share it with, creatives and make sure everybody's aligned and on the same page.
Yeah, they're a really good tool for that, for sure. I think what makes it a bit of a hot button topic right now is because they just take so much time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Time away from the set, time away from family. They've just gotten, they think they've just gotten so big in terms of importance. I also think because things are slower out there for people, there's so much more energy put into trying to get a job that they are making treatments a bit more, robust and more editorial style. So I'm always wondering, and you might not have an answer to this, which is absolutely okay, but, I'm always kind of probing people to see, if they've ever considered ways to help curtail how robust these treatments have been getting and how much time people are spending. Is that part of the conversation that ever comes up for you guys at Preacher, or are you just appreciative of getting the treatments? And
yeah, I think it's more like we're appreciative of getting a treatment. It's never, for the jobs that I've worked on, it's never a must. Like, there's enough content on people's site and through conversation that we can gather.
Oh my God. I think I want you to repeat that. I love that you're saying that. And I think so many of the photographers who might be listening to that might be like, wait, I have to rewind. Did she just say that? Because it's truly what so many people say, like, oh my gosh, like, can't you see that from my website that and we've just had an hour-long conversation. Like, why is it that I have to spend, 10 hours creating a treatment when it's all right there? So I love that you recognize that it's not always necessary.
Absolutely. I think, and especially hearing how much work goes into it and knowing that, there's it's a whole other job in itself to create it. It's not something that is always necessary, especially if it's like a smaller job that, that you can see through the site. You can see everything on the site and through conversation.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for that, Aggie, very much. I appreciate it. Let's talk a little bit about budgets and estimates. Are you always given budgets from your clients?
Yes. Yeah, we're typically given a budget, and we make our estimates based on those discussions beforehand.
And do you see value in sharing those budgets with someone like me and the people who are bidding on the projects? Or do you prefer us to just give you what we think it costs and then see how close we can come?
I typically like to be upfront about how much we have available. So I think it's makes everyone's lives easier to know, like, we're working within a certain budget. Are you able to fit that into the project, or are you not? It's like, just let's be upfront about it right away, rather than having someone come back with a cost that's just, too high, so you don't want to waste anyone's time by.
Well, we appreciate that very much. I mean, for all the obvious reasons. Also, we're trying to get you the best possible value for the amount of money that you have. So I want to give you as much as I can within that budget, as opposed to not knowing a budget and, kind of missing the mark. And also, like, if I'm going to be, and I don't want to say spinning the wheels, but if I'm going to be engaging people for their time, helping me create an estimate, and then I come back and I'm like, oh my God, they only had 50,000. And they'll be like, oh my gosh, okay, well, if I had known that up front, we wouldn't have engaged this person. We would have done it this way. Our approach would be different. So it really does, especially for clients that we don't know or haven't worked with before, everybody's idea of what is a good budget varies, right? A brand new client might think $20,000 is a good budget, and I'll be like, oh my God, that's a $200,000 job. So, I appreciate that you do that for sure. Mm-hmm. Okay, here's another question. Do you find that right now, fall of 2023, is it harder or easier to get an estimate approved right now? Or are things just, kind of languishing there as clients try and figure out what they're doing in their last quarter?
I'd say it's a range, and it would depend on the project. But since most of our budget conversations are upfront, it's not like there's some mystery about, okay, are we going to get this number approved? Typically, we'll know what we're working with already, knowing that the year is about to end. So there's only so much left within a client's budget. So it's always pretty much upfront. But there are times when we come back with a number and it's just not, there's some sticker shock. So
yeah. Well, it's good to hear that, like, if you've scoped a project and the client has agreed to the project, and then you're going to fulfill the estimate and find someone who can get it done for that, it's great to hear that if you can find it, then it's getting approved. There are other people out there right now who are saying, like, no, it's really hard to get an estimate approved, even though the client wants to shoot. They are holding back or feeling like they don't want to spend the money, or they're waiting to see, how the year ends and things like that. So that's great. That's good news. Okay. So when it comes time to choosing someone, right? Like you've gone through all the process, you've presented the bids to them. You're now in your award meeting with your client and you're sharing them your 3 choices. Do you find that your clients are, like, kind of choosing on their own, or are they kind of taking the recommendation from the agency?
Typically, they'll take our recommendation. We'll always be open to having conversations and hearing both sides of, if there was someone that they felt really passionate about that was not our recommendation, we'd be open to, those discussions and everything. But I'd say people like to go with our recommendation. People trust.
That's good.
Trust the creator.
That's great. I'd like to hear that. Is there any situation where you would give let's say a photographer or director, or even a post-production house who has to explain something complicated and difficult to the client, where you would ever give them direct access to the client so that they could kind of share their treatment and their point of view? Or is the agency always the in-between?
I'd say the agency is typically always the in-between. It would be a unique situation for us to connect our production partners directly. But, I can't say it's never happened, but
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm started to ask that question a bit more because as a, representing artists who are always in triple bids, it's really interesting to hear how many times we hear that the client chose, right? Over at Preacher, you're a very creative agency. So you're very fortunate that you have clients that value your input and take your recommendations. Where there's many times at an agency, we might be the recommend from the talent from the agency, but the client chooses someone else. So it makes me kind of think a little bit about, I wish we had direct access to the client. I wish we could present our treatment to the client or have them be able to ask us questions, which I know is a lot to ask. And it could be a bit of a landmine giving, direct access to people that don't normally have it. But it's something I think about, and I just have been starting to ask the question to see if other people are thinking about it as well.
Yeah. And there are opportunities for production partners to ask those questions in like a pre-pro meeting, or, that's kind of when client and production partners are we're all there together. So
Yeah.
That's a great opportunity to ask those questions.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what is your process to let someone know that they didn't get the job?
I will typically give a phone call or, depending on like, if it was like, a quick conversation and wasn't too involved, there was no treatments or anything, then maybe just an email. But if it was like we were talking for a few weeks and it was a drawn out process, then absolutely a phone call, I think, would be something respectful and
yeah. Oh, thank you for that too. I appreciate that. There are a lot of times we just get email and it falls a little flat when you did put in all the work and time and effort, and there's not a lot of information to go back to the team with. So picking up the phone is always appreciated, although I know it's not ideal and it's like hard and it's the last thing anyone has time for. So when you do it, thank you. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're kind of winding down. I just have a few more last questions for you. And I wondered if you have any predictions for the rest of 2023.
Gosh, I think my prediction for 2023 and maybe even into 2024 is we're going to see a lot more social content. I think we're going to see people putting their ad dollars to social content and rather than broadcast streaming and traditional advertisements. I think we're going to see a rise in TikTok and Instagram and Facebook marketing. So I think that's going to be the big thing.
Interesting. And how about AI? Are you seeing your teams find strong AI tools for them to use?
Yeah, the agency just recently wrapped up an AI workshop, which was super helpful, just kind of to help everyone get a better understanding of what the future looks like in AI. And rather than just rejecting it, we're trying to embrace it and see what ways we can incorporate that into our jobs. Me personally, I don't use it every day, but there are some helpful tools out there, and having a better understanding of AI and how to incorporate it into our jobs, I think is something that could really benefit people in the future. There's obviously some scary parts of it where I didn't even know that you could just, by the click of a button, you could basically retouch a full photo and have the background be removed completely. Like and that would take me, a couple hours to work. So that is like, wow, we're really moving fast here. But I think if we all kind of have a better understanding of it. But I'm curious about you. How do you feel about AI and the future of it within?
Well, it's terrifying and exciting all at once, for sure. I think the idea that it's moving really, really fast is terrifying. The fact that we have all these new creative tools is what's fascinating. And I think a lot of it for my side of the table will be about how it kind of plays out in the courts, the idea of usage, the idea of data sets not being, where are we pulling the data from? How are we creating those images? Copyright is a very, very important part of our industry. And it's something that we're going to want to protect. I think we're all approaching it very cautiously and looking to partners like, the Artist Management Association and a few other groups that are consciously trying to pay attention to how they're showing up, places like Adobe, and they're really trying to show up in a responsible way. And I'm really kind of trying to track closely along with that for our artists and our industry.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like if you ask me next week, I will have a different answer than I would have the week after next. And the week, that's how quickly it's changing. So,
exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay. So just 2 more questions. I ask everyone the same questions. What is your favorite thing to do on a Sunday? And if you weren't a producer, what would you do?
Oh, those are great questions. My favorite thing to do on a Sunday, I have just recently gotten into pickleball. So that's kind of my favorite thing. I would, love to just spend the day outside, play some pickleball.
That's awesome.
Maybe grab some coffee and pizza after. I don't know. That would be a perfect day.
Sounds great. And if you weren't a producer, what would you be?
Gosh, I think I would still be in the, creative space. I maybe a film director.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Given your
kind of makes sense, yeah. Given my background, well, so kind of a close partner and role. But yeah, I would stick in something similar because I think this is a space that I've always known that I wanted to be in, and I could see an easy transition into that role.
I feel like, as I told you, I think your episode, I can't remember at this moment, but whoever's listening to this will know you're maybe episode 98 at this point. I feel like by now I should have edited the question to be, if money weren't an option and you weren't a producer, what would you want to do? Because I think if you think about it as a job versus if you think about it as a passion, I think there are 2 different answers. So maybe after episode 100, I'll evolve that question a little bit. Yeah. So, well, this was really, really lovely, Aggie, to get to know you, hear about where you are in the process with Preacher, and your teams and your clients and your agency are very fortunate to have you. And I've really, really just enjoyed getting to know you. So thank you for your time. And I hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thank you so much, Heather. This was so much fun.
Awesome.